what does HAICU do for the LGBTQI community in the institution?
There are four ways that we try and assist and support LGBTI and MSM and UCT, and it's basically through four strategic areas of curriculum, co-curriculum, research and policy, and finally health and communications. So what that means essentially is we're trying to create a homonormative environment within the lecture space that students can identify with. Secondly, in co-curricular, so also looking at resident spaces. How are we reframing the discussion so that we are teaching issues of inclusion and diversity? The fourth piece about research and policy is where the sustainability of the institutional response lies. So because we have such a mobile population in our students, we need to ensure that programmatically a policy is embedded in the institution that sustains the thread of a homonormative, inclusive environment. The fourth piece around health and communication also speaks to inclusion. How are we ensuring that the UCT space is not prescriptive or heterosexist? What is our imagery used? What terminology is being used? How are marketing communications shared that are not exclusionary or marginalizing populations further?
So, Cyan, you mentioned MSM, that's males who have sex with males, and that's a concept that's unknown amongst the student body, or it's grouped together with homosexuals. So I just want you to explain that, like, in the simplest way possible, and how it might manifest itself, like, in our everyday lives. Sure. And part of that is why can't we have an MSM student here speaking to us and telling us about their experience?
Yeah. So I need to frame my response in the following way. The terms MSM, WSW, LGBTQTI are very Eurocentric, and there's been a lot of discourse around what is the terminology that Africans relate to. And so I think that there needs to be a whole dialogue on what terminology we want to use as Africans, because it is an adopted discourse. These labels have been acquired, and if we look back before we were colonialized, same-sex relationships did exist in African cultures. And when we did become colonialized, people were unable to relate to these terms. So from that premise, I understand why MSM is a confusing term for most, because people actually don't know what that means. And how we explain it, or the biomedical response, would be that it's behavioral, it's not an identity. So a heterosexual male may engage in same-sex behaviors but still identify sexually as a heterosexual, similarly with WSW, women having sex with women. And this further compounds the challenge of MSM being a marginalized population, because not only are they trying to live up to a heteronormative construct of only males and females live and be together, they are further marginalized by services that are highly heterosexist, and that are irrelevant to them as MSM. On our campus, we should no longer assume a heterosexist environment within the clinician space. And student wellness services, including psychologists, have been really supportive in collaborating with us in this program so that they become sensitized practitioners. So no longer should you walk into UCT's clinical spaces and be recognized within a gender binary or within this heterosexual. And in terms of curriculum, we want to really explore pedagogies of transformation that really speak to homonormative inclusion and terminologies that are relevant to all students, not just some. And in the co-curricular spaces, ensuring that residences factor in the fluidity of sexuality as well as gender.
So what are some of the long-term plans of the institution in terms of dealing with this particular issue?
Sure. I bring it back to a point that you said where the students can't be the champions of this. But from HAICU's perspective, the students are the champions of this. The strength of our co-curricular program rests on the premise of peer-led discourse. If our students aren't able to engage with one another and speak about it in safe spaces, then we don't really have, we won't get the inclusive environment that HAICU is trying to create here at UCT. So yes, student engagement is paramount and is at the forefront of this program, and it definitely leads the co-curricular strategy for the institution. Raise awareness around students who are questioning, or not even questioning, but are frightened to ask. They should not feel frightened anymore to go out there and ask student wellness, go to the drop-in clinic, speak to the nurses there, or book an appointment with a counsellor, or find the outzone in logos, which are dotted around campus, because behind those doors there are people who are willing to support them and mentor them through their period of questioning their identity or their sexuality.
So you mentioned the outzone in project campaign. So what is that about?
Sure. So the outzone in campaign is one of the sustained structures of MSM LGBQTI program here at UCT. And the focus of that is creating safe spaces all over campus for students who are questioning their identity or want further engagement or help or assistance around finding and exploring their sexuality. So academics, student leaders, chairs of student societies have adopted the outzone in logo. They've stuck it up on their doors, and students who are questioning can be assured of knocking on that door and finding someone who understands what they're going through and is willing to support them and mentor them through their self-exploration. And should the student require further services, that the students will be referred to student wellness, specifically the psychologist team, who are equipped to further engage with them around their self-exploration. All the outzone in mentors are trained. They are trained under a lay counselor system, so that they're able to appropriately refer should they find that the student needs further engagement. But up until that point, they are more than willing to speak, spend time with, and mentor that students and assist them in any way possible through their self-identity.